Hello, Broadway fans. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and here with me is David Morse of How I Learned to Drive, the recent Broadway revival of Paul Vogel's classic play. And David, it's rare to see an actor revisit a role so many years later. This one premiered in 1997, but even rarer still to have so much of the original cast and director come back for it. What was it about this specific play right now that made you excited to come back?
Well, that was an important question for us to answer at all about doing this, because we tried to do it for so long. It wasn't that we wanted it to be 25 years. It's just that's how it worked out. They actually came to, Mary Louise Mark actually came to me 10 years after our Broadway run, saying, listen, the play never made it to Broadway. We think we have an opportunity to do it. And we would love to do the 10-year anniversary, do it on Broadway. But I hadn't done another play in 10 years. But, sort of How I Learned to Drive, and then, taking care of, working in movies and TV and other things. But it was too hard doing the play. And I said at the time, listen, I have to do another play besides How I Learned to Drive before I can do this again. I just have to for myself. And they understood. They were disappointed. And just thinking that, well, of course, we'll be able to do it on Broadway after that. But then Mary Louise wound up doing a series in The Weeds, and then it just kept not working out. And at one point, Darryl Roth, who's been with it forever, found it couldn't get a theater, and because our schedules were working out, but couldn't get a theater. And 23 years later, we got together to rehearse the play, and the pandemic hit. We had to wait another 2 years. But before we started those rehearsals 2 years ago, once we actually had a theater, MTC, that wanted to do this at Broadway, we then thought, wait a minute, are we just doing this to do it? Or is it really important to be doing this? Is it important to us to be doing it? And is it important for the world to have this exist within it? Especially after everything's happened in the world with not just the Me Too movement, but the kind of the sexual abuse, power abuse that has happened in this world. And we decided, before we ever start rehearsals, let's spend a couple days together, just talk about why we're doing this, and should we really be doing it? And those 2 days were really essential and revealing and personal and very moving, and brought us together in a deeper way than we have been together before.
Is there something in there when you went back into the rehearsals that you thought, oh, I didn't quite get this the first time, but you had an opportunity, a second chance to go back? Was there something new that you got out of it this time?
I know Mary Louise felt very strongly about that with her work in it. And she was fantastic originally, but there were things that kind of haunted her that she never felt like she quite got. I didn't really feel that in terms of what I did. I was sort of, I was a little fearful coming into it, that I felt I could feel that performance locked into me in some way now. And I just really didn't want to be locked in. We're new people and in a new world, and 25 years older, and we wanted to give ourselves over now and see who we are and see in these characters. And that's been the very revealing experience.
Well, in that vein, what's been kind of the most surprising thing to you that has been revealed anew?
Well, when I originally did it, and Paula said this, Paula Vogel, who wrote it, she said we were actually younger than the characters she imagined. And we were younger people doing roles that she had written to be a little bit older. And we were, younger selves, and with different perspectives. And I don't really want to talk about specific moments, but I can feel who I am now, bringing stuff to this that wasn't there before. So the fears that I had about sort of living up to that production or not are unimportant, because it's really, I'm a different man at this point in my life, and feeling and seeing and responding in different ways. And I really love that.
Yeah. I think, a lot of this play obviously deals with very heavy themes. And a lot of actors, most actors will tell you they need to find a way to empathize with their character when they're playing them. And there is some really dark, horrible stuff mixed in with the person you're playing. What is the process like for you of finding a way to empathize or sympathize with your character?
Well, Paula Vogel did a lot of that work for me, just the way she wrote this play. And I've said this, before. I actually was asked to do a movie right before I read the script for this, playing a father who was a pedophile and abusing his daughter. And as beautiful as that script was, and ultimately the movie was, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do the role. I couldn't bring myself there. But because of the way Paula, then I read this. I did the original reading of this at the Vineyard Theater, and I totally got this guy. And I got it because of the compassion that she has for him, the love that she has for him, the grace that she allows the story to be told with, and allows him and herself, the character, the little bit character. She really allows both these people and the world is taking place in. And that's all I needed to go into it.
Yeah, it seems the fishing scene stands out to me as one of those moments where you don't expect a character like that to just get this simple moment of empathy and good-hearted nature. It's shocking to kind of see. It's shocking in a strange way, almost.
Yeah, what's interesting about that scene is in the original production, Mark Brokaw, the director, he wanted to cut the scene. And Paula kept saying, well, can we just see it, whether it works or not? And he kept saying, I don't see what it has to do with the story we're telling. We stopped so the uncle can go fishing with somebody. I'm not sure it works with the play. And she convinced him to hang on. He's like, okay, that's really what you want. And then in that first preview, he saw it in front of an audience, and he was like, wow, okay, I get it. But he needed those people there to feel that with them, and see where the place was for it in the story.
Yeah, and I would say obviously there's been a lot more, I think, free conversation lately around these topics. People, I think, are coming forward more and willing to talk about this sort of thing. Have you noticed in this staging, like, different types of audience reactions and feedback? How has that been?
Well, I will tell you that the first production, when we did the previews, nobody knew what the play was about. Obviously, because there'd been no reviews, and they thought, oh, that's a happy sounding play, How I Learned to Drive. And the beginning of the play, you're thinking, okay, this is a happy story about the uncle and the niece. And there was one scene in particular where we could hear it every night. The chairs up in the balcony, which were metal chairs, the scrapes, people who had to get out. It became a play they were not prepared for. And after the reviews came out, the thing sold out for the entire run. But after every performance, there would be people outside who had no one to talk to, had been abused in their lives, and they just couldn't leave. They just had to be around other people who understood. And this was a play where people they were going to, because they'd been through it, and they just needed to be around people in a community. And it's one of the things I loved about that original production. And now one of the unfortunate things is we got a sign on our door that says there's no autographs, that the actors can't talk with you, you got to be masked, and there's a distance between us. So we're not getting that feedback, which is too bad. And all we can get, the feedback we get is when we walk out, during the play itself or the curtain call, whatever, which is, it's a great feedback. But those more intimate conversations, we're not getting to have those.
Yeah. Was there ever a fear, with this huge, obviously Broadway was gone for a very long time, and we're all very happy to have live performance back. Was there ever a fear that it wasn't going to work out after spending all these years hoping to stage it again?
Of course, that we were having people die around us, people in our families, in the communities, and we had no idea. And we got together on Zoom a few times during that year, 2 years. Obviously, like everybody, we thought, okay, it's gonna be a couple of weeks, or it'll be a couple of months, it'll be next fall. Originally, we were gonna do it a year ago. MTC thought we'd be able to be on the stage last spring. That didn't happen. They had to let us know, and they kept hoping somehow they could keep this group of people together until we could finally get on a stage again. And kind of miraculously, we all managed to come together 2 years later and pull this off. And it's been a blessing.
And a lot of actors with this shutdown have talked about whether or not, the play and their materials kind of stays with them and what their practices were for coming back. But since you have such a history with this, you and Mary Louise, when you first come back to rehearsal, does it still feel like it lives in you in a way? Or does it feel like starting from scratch?
Well, let's include Johanna Day in that, because she was in that.
Of course.
Yeah, and she was great. People have asked me, well, it must be easy, you got all the lines, you know all the lines. It doesn't work that way. The lines, they disappear. It'd be awfully great if they just showed up again, but they don't. But there is something that happens. Our lives shape us. Our experiences shape us. It just does. They form who we are. And that original production was so vivid, and we were in it for 6 months. So there was this sort of pattern built into us, kind of emotionally, or it was there, whether we like it or not. It was there, and we had to kind of let that be there, but at the same time be open to these new people. And it was really getting to know each other again in a lot of ways. 25 years later, as older people, who've been through different experiences than we've been through then. And I think that's been as enriching and as important as getting on that stage and showing to the audience this rehearsal process and opening ourselves to each other.
And speaking of the lines, one of the things I really appreciate about the staging of this is it's a very, simply staged production. There's not huge set changes and costume changes that we're dealing with, which kind of brings the focus to the dialogue, the words that Paul has written. What does that do for you on stage? What dynamic does that create for you as an actor when that's really the focus?
It's sort of like a great extension of the rehearsal process, because in the rehearsal process, your imagination is creating that world. You don't have the sets there, and that's true with pretty much every rehearsal you do. So in those rooms that you're rehearsing in, that is your world. You got your chairs, you got your tables, whatever it is. It's a very simple world you're rehearsing in. So for this, it's almost no different in a way. We're on a stage now, and there's an audience out there, and you have to make that adjustment. But that world you created in your mind, that hotel room, that restaurant, wherever you are, fishing, next to a river, it's your imagination. It's all of our combined imaginations. We're all giving ourselves over to that pretend world. And it's the magic of theater, really, when you don't have to do everything and make everything be as realistic as possible. It is the great thing in theater, is giving ourselves over to that imaginative world.
And this, if you think back to your time in the original production off Broadway, I mean, it was an enormous hit. Paula won the Pulitzer. You won nearly every industry award for it at the time for your performance. Were you aware at that moment that you were part of something that was going to persist, down the line? What did it feel like to be part of that?
Going from doing that original reading, which Mary Louise didn't do, Terry Jones, I think, did that original one, thinking, this is a beautiful play. They're never going to ask me to do it. I went home, after doing the reading, went back to Philadelphia, and 2 weeks later, I got a call saying, we'd like you to do the role at the Vineyard. And you just feel like, great, I get to go be a part of a really good play. And Mary Louise comes on board, and Johanna and the other actors, and Mark, and we're doing something that's good. You can tell it's good. We're all here because it is good. It's a really good script, but you have no idea beyond that what the life was going to be. And all of a sudden the awards start rolling out, or the nominations. And then one day she's got the Pulitzer Prize, and we're on the stage announcing to the audience that Paula has just won the Pulitzer Prize for this play. It's completely unexpected. And Daryl Roth came on as a producer and wanted to move it across the street to the Victory Theater. I think it was the Victory Theater, and run it off Broadway. And you can tell from the audiences, you can tell from the reviews, you can tell that this thing has become a phenomenon in New York, and people had to get in and see this thing. There was no mistaking it. So from that, it's only natural there would be a life for this play after it. Now that we would be doing it 25 years later, it was unimaginable. But then here we are.
Well, before I let you go, continuing down the New York theater route, I don't think you, after that production, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you returned to New York theater until The Seafarer, I think, in another major production. But now we've gotten you back. You had a Tony nomination for The Iceman Cometh. So what would keep, how do we keep you here in New York doing theater? What are there anything, is there anything you're still hoping to do on stage?
Well, that 10-year span, I'd done a bunch of theater before that, but it was that 6 months that I did with How I Learned to Drive. Our kids were little, and Susan was just my wife. She was carrying such a load, because I was doing movies too, and I was away all the time. And she asked me not to do a play for a while until the kids get older. And I agreed to that. And it took 10 years before I did another play. And it turned out to be a great one with The Seafarer. All you have to do is ask me at this point, and I'll be happy to come back and do another play. So I put the production together and ask me.
Well, directors, writers, ask them away. It's fantastic work here in How I Learned to Drive. It's wonderful to see it on stage again. So thank you, David, for talking with me. And if you're watching at home, subscribe to Gold Derby. Keep in touch with us throughout this Broadway season. David, thanks again.
Oh, Sam, thanks so much.